For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is Up in the Rafters, where I'm joined by Carolina basketball legend and 2017 national champion Justin Jackson. Justin, we're recording this for the people on Thursday, September 15th. People are listening or watching this on Friday, September 16th. And for the earliest time in recent memory, after one game, I'm going to declare it the Cowboys season. It's officially over. What?
Wow, that's a way to start the podcast, huh? Just
Should we
hit them
hold
where it hurts. Hit them
should
where it hurts.
Should we hold a moment of silence? Do you have anything you'd like to say? Dak is out. It's Cooper
Look,
Rush.
this is what
Things
I'm
are
saying.
bleak.
Don't ever count us out. Don't ever count us out. America's team always comes in. Always. We might not win in the playoffs, but we're gonna make a run sooner or later. So don't count us out.
And to break the fourth wall for some people, me, Justin, Kenny Williams, and Brandon Robinson, we have a Madden franchise. As a successful Madden GM in your own right, if you're Jerry Jones, what are you doing to try to fix this Cowboy team?
There's a lot. There is a lot. Me personally, if I'm Jerry Jones, I have to step away a little bit. Me personally, like I got to delegate things to other people that I trust and believe can make the right decisions. I feel like sometimes people who are kind of high up in organizations can kind of get in the way a little bit. Um, but there's a lot of offensively, man. They need some wide receivers. Obviously, now we got to go with Cooper Rush, which I think he's going to be okay, but he's definitely not Dak. Um, so there's a lot of holes we got to try to plug in this boat before we sink. So we got to figure it out.
The one benefit we have as Madden GMs, we were able to turn injuries off, which is a
Yeah,
huge benefit.
exactly. We didn't have to worry week in and week out whether our star quarterbacks or anybody would still be there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
our 53 is our 53 for the entire season.
exactly. Backups are not even a thing.
Getting to UNC, it was announced that live action with Carolina basketball would be September 30th. What did you think of the name change from late night to live action to give something more unique to HD?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, like late night, that was Coach Williams' thing, right? Like that's late night with Roy every single year. That's when you got to come and see the team, see Coach Williams speak, all that kind of stuff. Um, what's funny is live action. Coach Davis uses that literally all the time. Like that's probably his biggest phrase that he uses. So to see them change to that and kind of like you said, use something that's obviously something that Coach Davis loves to say and kind of really believes in. I love that move. I love that change, and obviously it shows that hopefully Coach Davis is around for a while.
From your days as a player, what did you look forward to the most about your late night experiences?
It just kind of changed from year to year. My freshman year, it was just cool to get out there and play in front of some fans. Up to that point, I mean, you played pickup, you had workouts, you might have had like a couple practices before that, but it was like the first time for you to get out there and play in the Dean Dome in front of other fans. So that was probably the coolest thing. Honestly, I wasn't a big like the whole dances and skits and stuff. That really wasn't my thing. But then as the years went on, like the older you got, it was just kind of cool to run out the tunnel again, kind of hear the fans go crazy, that kind of stuff. So it just kind of changes, as the years go on.
I was going to ask, what did you like the least? Was it the dancing?
The dancing I liked the least amount, which what's crazy is probably most of the players would say that, but the fans for some reason probably love that the most. Like I will never forget when I think it was Kennedy, my freshman year maybe, and they were doing the skit where he was singing and he started singing Whitney Houston, and the fans went absolutely bananas when he started. Um, and like the fans just love it. So it's cool for the fans to be able to come on and see kind of that side of things with the players.
Yeah, I feel like something that people don't think about when it comes to late night is like you guys already have a ton of responsibilities on your plate with schoolwork, with practices, with the tutoring, a lot of adjustment, and then what was the schedule like when you have to go throughout your day and then you have dance practice?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they do it now, but I don't think we had the best usage of our time when I was at school. Um, like you said, we would go throughout the whole day, whatever our schedule was, classes, lifting, whether we had pickup or practice or whatever that day. And then we would have late night, like dance practice at like 10, like the whole week before late night, like every single night. And it was like by 10 o'clock, guys were dead. Either they had to study for something or they were just ready to be done. Um, so yeah, I don't think we were very smart in how we, planned out our, um, you know, practices and things like that. But yeah, do what you got to do.
On Tuesday, the full UNC basketball schedule was released. What were your biggest takeaways? What stretches or games kind of stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you look at kind of from the beginning of Phil Knight until that Pittsburgh game, I guess on what December 30th, um, that's a tough little stretch of games, bro. Like that's some good high level basketball they're going to be playing. Obviously, it's going to be cool for them to play in the Phil Knight tournament again and be able to play against Ohio State and Michigan and stuff like that. But I mean, you throw in there, you got to go to Indiana, which for me was the hardest away game I've ever had. I had while I was at North Carolina. But then you start off with Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, which obviously Georgia Tech is that game that still haunts me to this day. And then Virginia Tech isn't a slouch. So it's like that's a tough stretch of games. If you get through that and you come out on top, kind of through that stretch of games, I think you set yourself up well going into ACC play.
Yeah, the two I made a note of three things. One, it's the home and home with Virginia, North Carolina. Virginia is always a tough place to go. I think the national championship kind of distracts from the loss that year at Virginia, where it was a fight to get to what was it, like 40, 50 points?
It was like the lowest scoring game ever in ACC history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so going to at Virginia is always going to be tough, and you'd expect Tony Bennett to have a pretty good team this year, with some of the talent that they have returning. The closing stretch where you go at NC State, at Notre Dame, where Carolina has struggled recently too. You have a home game against Virginia. You go at Florida State, and then you have your senior day, of course, with Duke coming to Chapel Hill, which is going to be a big stretch where this team is getting ready for the ACC tournament and postseason play, and you kind of get a sense of what the team is going to be then, and hopefully rounding into shape, kind of like your teams at Carolina, where Roy Williams always had you guys playing your best basketball late in the season. And then with all the conference realignment talk, is this a Big Ten preview? You could see Michigan State in the Phil Knight tournament, and then you go at Indiana. You have Ohio State in New York at the Garden, and then your next game after playing Ohio State is their biggest rival, and you play Michigan in Charlotte. So Adam Smith from Inside Carolina said it best, where after this Carolina basketball season, Hubert Davis could give a great scouting report on almost every Big Ten contender. But if I said you could have a ticket to one game on this schedule for UNC, the disclaimer, no Duke games. I feel like that would be an easy
Yeah.
out for you. If you could go to one game, home, away, or one of these neutral games, is there one that kind of sticks out?
Me personally, it would be the Indiana game. Um, I'm not totally sure how good Indiana is. I know they're supposed to be pretty good going this year. I know they've got a player that's supposed to be kind of in the Player of the Year type preseason running. Um, but the environment there at Indiana is the loudest environment that I think I've ever played in. And so I think going into that type of game and being able to sit there and watch that game, obviously the quality of basketball is one thing, but then to see how North Carolina is able to respond, with that type of environment, I think that would be a pretty dope game to go to if I had to pick one on that schedule.
Yeah, and the at Indiana, that's what college basketball is really about, going to places like Assembly Hall, going to places like Kansas or like Cameron Indoor, where it's like once you get all those students around, it has a way of evening out some of the talent discrepancies that you see. But for me, if I was picking, I'm biased. I'm going to the Garden, seeing Carolina versus Ohio State, the RJ Davis homecoming game. My early prediction for that, nobody hold me to it. RJ Davis has a Baylor type game, 30 plus points in his return, and carries North Carolina to a win. No bias there
Okay,
whatsoever.
that sounds like the complete opposite of no bias.
Bias. But it's also December 17th, Christmas time in the city for the fans that are looking for things outside of basketball. You can't beat New York City in Christmas time. But the last topic before we get to the mailbag from the Inside Carolina premium subscribers is a light one. A pair of Michael Jordan's game worn and signed sneakers from the 81-82 UNC season sold for $120,000 at an online auction where 50% of the proceeds are going back to the UNC basketball program. When you see something like this going for low six figures, what's your thoughts on somebody getting 120,000 for some MJ shoes?
To be honest, that sounds low for something of that level. I mean, so they were his game worn shoes,
Given
and
to a team manager. Yeah.
yeah, so I would have expected way more, to be honest. But I think it's cool for one. It's 50% of it's going back to UNC. Put a little bit more money back into that program. But yeah, I'm surprised it only went for 120. To be honest, I mean, you go online for any kind of Jordans like to just wear, like they're crazy amounts now. So I think whoever ended up getting that through that auction, I think they got a low key got a deal for them.
Yeah, my two thoughts when I first saw this is one, anytime I ever see this, I just always think, how much money does somebody have where they could just drop $120,000 on on sneakers that they're not going to wear, they're going to have displayed somewhere. So that disconnect from reality is always the most striking thing to me. And the second is, I guess it's kind of connected. If I buy these sneakers, the only way I'm buying these sneakers is if it makes me like Calvin Cambridge from Like Mike. If I put these, if I buy these sneakers for six figures, I'm putting them on, I'm lacing them up, I'm saying, make me like Mike. And if I take off and I can't dunk, we're
Send it
we're,
back. I need
we're
a
putting
refund.
them we're putting them back on it on the auction.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, 120,000. That is a lot of money just to just spend on some shoes that after you buy that, you're gonna put them up in a case, and you're really not gonna even think about them after that moment. To be
Yeah,
honest, so it's like it's just kind of
it's
throwaway money.
yeah, just a conversation starter at that point.
Yeah, it's like you know
You
what?
have you have a
I'll just
dinner guest over. Hey, what shoes
just
are
put it
those?
right
Oh,
there.
Michael
Yeah,
Jordan's.
I got them at an auction. Yada yada yada. All right, what's for dinner? That kind of deal. Like, yeah, that is insane.
What do you think the best memorabilia that you have from your playing days in Chapel Hill is? Do we have anything that's pushing six figures?
No shot. Six figures? There's no way. I don't think anybody on my team had anything pushing six figures. Uh, but I mean, there are some fanatics out there, man. Like there are some people that like bleed North Carolina blue. Like they will do anything they can to get their hands on a towel from the Final Four.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I've never really looked into it, to be honest. But I probably have some stuff that I could sell for a decent amount of money. But six figures, there's no way. There's
I
no way I
was
could sell that.
yeah, I was thinking a shadow box, the national championship jersey, the piece of the net,
Sure.
and the shoes. If we sign them all, maybe you do a meet and greet too. six figures, and instead of 50% back to the program, 50% is coming back to me because it was my
I
idea.
knew it. I knew it was going to go back to you. That was going to help. Oh my goodness. I
50,
still don't even. I don't even think that would go for six figures though, bro. For one, I'm not doing 50% back to you. There's no way. But I don't even think that like six figures is a lot of money,
yeah,
bro. A lot of
it's
money.
yeah. It would be something where also 2017 was so recent that we need
That,
to let it age a bit.
that is true. That is true. Give about 10, 15
Yeah,
years, be all right.
yeah. The first question I have from the Inside Carolina message boards, is from Word by Nature. He said, from what Justin has experienced and observed in his 3 years in the UNC basketball program, as well as his time in the NBA, do you feel that the UNC basketball fraternity of players is distinctively stronger than most college basketball programs? And if so, have you seen any college basketball programs whose fraternity of players is comparably as strong as Carolina's?
It just kind of depends. I mean, I would say like my first initial reaction would be yes. But that's because I'm in the North Carolina kind of, fraternity or brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, there are some other schools that have pretty strong, as much as, fans don't want to admit it, Duke has a pretty good as far as like, guys who have gone to the league or gone off and played professionally who like are still really close. Kentucky, even though they have a ton of one and dones, like everybody from Kentucky kind of knows each other. But when it comes to like, people staying in touch and like people going to people's weddings and, hanging out in the summer and that kind of stuff, it seems like North Carolina kind of has the best and closest knit family there is around. So I guess I would say, yeah, North Carolina definitely is definitely a different level.
What is that bond like for you guys as players to where, you've never met or talked to somebody like Vince Carter or Antoine Jameson until you actually meet them, and then you guys do have that connection with UNC in your time in Chapel Hill.
I mean, I will say, obviously everybody's different. Like each individual person is different. Um, but Coach Williams, kind of during my time and just kind of throughout his years, he almost recruited kind of the same people when it came to like mindsets and how they were with other people. I guess I would say, obviously you have your outliers here and there, but when it comes to guys that went to UNC, they're all good guys, guys that you can maybe you haven't met, like you said, maybe you haven't met or you haven't seen in a while, that you can sit down and start rapping with them. And it's like you had been friends for the past 5 years, So I think it just kind of comes down to like who the coaches recruit, the kind of people they are. And then two, just having that thing in common. Like you said, Vince was my vet when I first got drafted to Sacramento, and I had never met Vince. Obviously, I looked up to him because he's one of the greatest basketball players ever, but I had never met him. And when I first met him and talked to him for the first time, it was as if we had, been cool for a while. So I think it's just a matter of how good the people are, and then just having you know, that common thing that you can, talk about or kind of start a conversation and kind of keep things going.
Yeah, that is pretty cool to think about having, you grow up with the Raptors Vince Carter jersey, you watch him put his arm through the hoop in the slam dunk contest. And then you have that bond with him over shared experiences playing for Carolina basketball. The next question I have is from Tim Dale 3. He says, take us through a typical Roy Williams practice. What do you guys start off with? I'm assuming some kind of form shooting, stretching, thought for the day. What kind of drills would you guys do? What would you end it with? And how did it vary depending on what point of the season you guys were at?
Yeah, so the beginning of the season and like preseason, the practices were always way longer. Those would go on for like 2.5 hours or however long you want to go. One thing, and I'm sure Coach Davis kind of does the same thing, but Coach Williams always laid out the practice plan literally to the minute. So like if we started practice at 3:30, we would have form shooting until like 3:37, and then we would go into stretching at from 3:37 to like 3:40. And then after that, we would kind of get into like we would do our transition drills. Um, we would do like 5-on-0, and then we would get kind of into I guess I'd call it the big part of practice where it would be like all the competitions, whether it was 5-on-5, maybe it was some sort of other transition drill, but it was kind of going back and forth a little bit. But it just depended on kind of what, like you said, what part of the season it was. The further we got into ACC play, practice would be probably an hour, and it'd be a lot more of 5-on-0. Maybe we'd have one or two competition plays of 5-on-5, but then it would be just getting shots up, going over offense, defense, concepts, that kind of stuff. But the cool part of it was that he would always give us the practice plan before, and we would always know, okay, well, we've got 27 minutes of 5-on-5 today, or we've got this transition drill that we got to do, or whatever. So we were able to kind of prepare for practice as opposed to just going into it blind, and then we're there for 3 hours and don't know, when it's supposed to end or whatever. So that helped us out a lot.
Cool behind the scenes, and great to know that he had something like that planned out to the exact minute, and just never wanted to waste even a second of practice, knowing how competitive the ACC and it's kind of like we mentioned earlier, why you guys probably always were peaking towards that late part of the season with how
Exactly.
detail oriented he is. The last question I have is from EMT 288838. Aside from the typical crapshoot that is March Madness and random things like injuries, what do you view as the biggest obstacle for this team following the footsteps of the 2017 redemption team? Said another way, what was the biggest challenge your 2017 team faced and how was it overcome?
I mean, the biggest challenge is all the praise that you get kind of going into the next season, to be honest. They are very similar with our team as far as like they've got a lot of basically the same team coming back. And they're already kind of viewed as the number one team in the country, the favorites to kind of make it back to the championship, that kind of deal. So the hardest thing is, for one, you have to block out all of that noise, right? And you have to focus on who y'all are as a team, and that's it. You don't listen to any of the, oh, these guys are so good, or whatever. But then too, like, guys now, they have the biggest target on their back going into each and every game. So I mean, you look at the schedule, and even a game against UNCW, right? Like, when you go into that game, they're looking at you as, okay, these guys were runner-up national champions, and everybody's saying they're supposed to be the best team in the whole country. So we're going to go in here and give what do we have to lose? So it's getting over that hump of, okay, we did make it there last year, but it's not going to be easy to make it back. So we have to focus on ourselves each and every day to continue to get better, because these other teams are doing the same thing, and they've gone out, they've recruited, they have transfers, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a matter of blocking out all the extra stuff and focusing on your team, like your teammates, your coaches, and trying to make it back there. So hopefully they can do that and just focus on each and every game and each and every practice.
Yeah, I love that point about the teams that come in with that target on North Carolina, the teams that have nothing to lose, because you look at the early part of the schedule, like UNCW, College of Charleston, James Madison, all those schools come in with the thought like, if we upset North Carolina, this is going to be the lead story across the nation. It's going to be the first thing people talk about on Sports Center, and that's something that's kind of tough to process, I think, when you're in the opposing locker room. And you mentioned blocking out like the noise. It is it something where once you get into the season, it's easier to block out the noise because you have other things to worry about, or was that kind of something that you felt like you guys had to constantly do in the 2017 season when you guys won the title?
I mean, everybody handled it differently, to be honest. I know for myself, I got off of, Twitter because Twitter was kind of the main place for like news and stuff like that. I got off of Twitter for a while. I really, to be honest, I don't really remember watching too much like, sports TV except for like football or maybe other, college games or other games. But like outside of that, I don't remember watching very much sports TV. So like Sports Center, all that kind of stuff. Um, because the more and more that you watch that stuff, it's going to be impossible to not kind of start feeling yourself, I guess, lack of a better words. Like the more and more that that fills your ears, just like if, people are always saying how terrible you are and how much better you need to get, all this kind of stuff. Like we're all human. So all you're going to do is think about that. Um, so, I mean, other guys, they kept their social media, they watch TV all the time and they were able to still block it out. But it's just whatever is best for you, whatever you think is best for you. I know nowadays guys probably aren't going to get off of social media. That's probably not, I mean, you can make money off of social media nowadays. So that's probably not the move. But they just have to find a way to make sure that they're locked in each and every day. And a day doesn't go by that they just kind of waste away, because at the end of the day, you want to just continue to get better each and every day, whether that's a little bit or a lot. So if they can do that, I think, they'll be right back where they want to be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this team does at blocking out the noise, as they're going to be the preseason number one team. When people have to make predictions early in the season, they're going to pick North Carolina. One, because of the talent they have coming back, and two, there isn't really a clear cut number two team. You look at a team like Houston, who has kind of flamed out of tournaments in the past. You look at a team like Gonzaga. I'm done picking Gonzaga in my brackets. I've made that promise to myself after last year. No matter how good Gonzaga looks, I cross my heart, promise that I will not pick them to win any more titles until they do. But yeah, and then you have a team like Duke, I guess, who's really young and having to replace a lot of pieces. So there isn't that natural challenger to the North Carolina team as of yet. So that'll be interesting to see as the season kind of plays out. But that's all we have this week. Justin, appreciate the time, appreciate everybody listening, and we will be back next week to talk more Carolina basketball.